Hey everyone, Brian Zane here with my review of AEW Dynamite for November 10th, 2021. It's the last episode of Dynamite before Full Gear this Saturday, and at the end of this video, I will have my predictions for that show, but for now, let's get right into Dynamite itself. As always, like what you like, don't be a dick. The show begins with Bryan Danielson taking on New Japan star Rocky Romero, and speaking of New Japan, we find out during the intros of this match that Okada himself has invited the best friends to join the Chaos stable, which I think is pretty cool to have some kind of American like satellite members in the larger New Japan group. I mean, imagine the inevitable interaction with Toru Yano and Orange Cassidy. My mind is just being blown preemptively by that. Speaking of Cassidy, there's a point early on where he does distract Bryan early on that allows Romero to dive onto him to try and get an advantage. I mean, this is a really fun match. Just some great technical wrestling by both guys. There's hard-hitting stuff. There's great submission and counter-submission work. A beautiful finish where Danielson makes Romero tap to the Tequila Sunrise, and so that's how Danielson wins. Gets the momentum going into what's sure to be a banger of a match against Miro on Saturday, which I'll get into in the predictions. I love that Danielson has won like every match since being in AEW in a different way. Jonathan Gresham was doing that a lot in ROH as well, and so I love when the technical wrestlers find the different ways to beat somebody, and Danielson's doing that in a great way. A very entertaining opener. It's time for Tony Schiavone to interview the Inner Circle ahead of their Minnesota Street fight at Full Gear, but as they make their entrance, the American Top Team and Men of the Year jump the group from behind, and they just get the Inner Circle just get laid out here in a major way. Junior Dos Santos at one point hits Guevara with a toxic right hand, according to JR, so apparently his fists are legit poisonous. Scorpio Sky brings out a table and gets it in the ring, and he and Ethan Page help Dan Lambert powerbomb Chris Jericho through the table off the second rope, and then afterwards Scorpio cops a JR line saying, "By God, he's been broken in half," and then you've got Ethan Page saying the mission now is for Dan Lambert to pin Chris Jericho in the Minnesota Street Fight on Saturday, but tonight they want to make him tap. So they have Dan Lambert putting the walls of Jericho onto Chris Jericho himself, but then the coup de grace this whole thing is Dan on the mic as he's putting the hold in saying, "It's a Boston Crab, championship wrestling from Florida," and like that right there, that won me over with Dan Lambert. That singular line, like, okay, that's my favorite thing Lambert's done in the entire time he's been in AEW. I enjoyed the segment because I thought it did a good job putting the Inner Circle in peril, but also because there was very little to no talking, especially between Chris Jericho and Lambert, because the last couple of weeks of their promos I have not been a fan of, and it's kind of made me kind of sour on this storyline, but the less talking between those two guys for the purpose of this segment, the better. Women's trios match up next as Ty Conti, Anna Jay, and Thunder Rosa take on Dr. Britt Baker, Rebel, and Jamie Hayter. Early in the match, Anna is cut off in the ropes by the cheating heels, but there's just it's kind of sloppy cut off. They kind of like miss grabbing each other, and the fans pick up on that as they recover and kind of boo them for it. But the match continues. We get some, as Conti's making her big hot tag and is a house of fire against all three opponents, there is a bit of legal woman syndrome in this match. That very much that lucha style of tag where there's no physical tag, it seems, as the women kind of swap in and out, but it happens nonetheless. In the end, Conti plants Rebel with her finisher as Dr. Britt looks on and hesitates getting in the ring. She lets it happen, essentially, for Conti to win. Match was okay. It was a little disorganized at times, for sure. But that being said, Conti is super over, and Thunder Rosa as well. Very much popular with the fans. We get a Ruby Soho, Chris Statlander promo for their TBS Championship Tournament matchup. And it was a Jungle Boy taking on Anthony Bowens of the Acclaimed, and you've got Max Caster's pre-match rap where he says Jungle Boy stutters every time he cuts a promo, and he also makes a reference to Jungle Boy's girlfriend Anna Jay hanging out with 7 guys, being the Dark Order. It's a good match with Bowens and Jungle Boy, very evenly matched. I think both guys get a lot of time to shine here. Jungle Boy fights off both Bowens and Caster on the outside, so it's essentially kind of this periodic 2-on-1 thing, taking all the heat. Jungle Boy is able to fight back. He gets the snare trap locked in for Bowen to tap out, so it's a good match and a good win for Jungle Boy. Then after the bell, though, Bobby Fish runs in and beats Jungle Boy down for a while until Christian Cage and Luchasaurus end up making the save. And then after that, we cut to the backstage where we see the Super Click, Adam Cole and the Young Bucks kind of celebrating seeing Jungle Boy get beat down. Bobby Fish shows up, and Cole basically has him kind of like as his mercenary or hired gun to do the Super Click's bidding, of course, playing off the history of Fish and Cole together in NXT. I mean, they really hit you over the head with it too, because Matt Jackson tells Bobby Fish, there is no dispute, it's the era of the Elite. Like, bonk. But anyway, they want Fish to take out Jungle Boy at Rampage on Friday, but leave just a little bit left of him so that the Super Click can pick the bones on Saturday. I like this angle here. I like how they're playing into the past with, Fish and Cole. Fish is a mercenary. I kind of dig that. He's not officially a member of the Elite here. And you know what? It just makes me think, with Kyle O'Reilly's contract allegedly coming up at the end of the year with NXT, I really can't see him not going to AEW to hang out with the rest of his friends who jumped ship. There's a great hype package for the Eddie Kingston CM Punk match. By the way, the promo that they refer to in this package from last week was phenomenal. One of the best promos I've heard all year. Absolute delight. And speaking of which, they do a little bit more build of this match later in the show where there's this parking lot scuffle between the two of them. It's a pull-apart brawl. Even Ruby Soho is holding back Eddie. My favorite part of this, though, and the part that I think is the most gifable or memeable moment, is Kingston, after the separations happen, you see him sprinting toward Punk because he wants a piece, but the rest of them kind of catch up to him. And just his little run, it was just such a great moment when I watched that one. I'm going to go to our next match as Wheeler Yuta takes on Wardlow of the Pinnacle. It's like size versus speed, but it's a total squash. They actually mess up early on because Yuta tries to do a rebound off the second rope, but he slips, and it's just all Wardlow from there. He just beats the hell out of him. 4 consecutive power bombs, then that rising knee lift strike from the corner for Wardlow to win very decisively. Then after the match, you got Isaiah Cassidy and the Butcher of HFO jumping the best friends. Matt Hardy, who's been sitting in the front row this whole time up to this point, he joins in with a chair and hits the twist of fate onto Orange Cassidy with the chair wrapped around his head and neck area. It looked very brutal. And this blood feud with Matt Hardy and Orange Cassidy, which I feel is gotten so intense and escalated just because of Matt Hardy's overacting about this, still not over yet. Up next, Lio Rush makes his Dynamite debut, teaming with his protege Dante Martin against Matt Sydal and Lee Moriarty, one of the newest signees to AEW, and it didn't disappoint. I mean, no one disappointed in this match. It was a very fun bout with all 4 guys. I mean, some beautiful work with Lee and Dante in the opening moments, then moving on to Rush and Sydal having a fun exchange, and especially Lio Rush just got to flip and fly all over the place. He was a lot of fun watching this thing. Dante hitting his double springboard moonsault onto Moriarty for the win. What a match. Just a real fun, the best description is kind of like a popcorn match, but it was just a lot of high flying, a lot of fun. Singles match up next as Dax Harwood takes on Pac. How long have FTR had that Midnight Express inspired theme? I've been kind of, watching the show on and off the last few weeks, so I'm not totally in the loop on that, but it's a very cool theme. We get some wrestling to start things off. There is a "This is Wrestling" chant. It was. Another very good match on our hands here. A match that didn't have a whole lot of hype going into it. Oh my God, this is going to be match of the night. But this really delivered. These two guys beat the hell out of each other. Pac hitting a top rope brainbuster at one point that looked absolutely sick. Just a lot of big impact stuff by both guys. Even earlier in the match, they're fighting on the outside and Dax gets backdropped onto the ramp. Harwood taps immediately after Pac transitions into his Rings of Saturn submission. I forget the name of it off the top of my head. I'm sorry. But after the bell, Cash Wheeler jumps Pac. The lights cut out, and then Malachi Black and Andrade El Idolo teleport into the ring, and they start to beat down on Pac some more. And then we've got the Lucha Brothers coming down the ramp, and Cody Rhodes coming in from the crowd to all make the save and everything. And the baddies are chased off, and we find out a little bit later the match is official now. Pac and Cody versus Malachi Black and Andrade. So this match accomplished a couple of goals, setting that match up and making it official, and also further building, the stuff with FTR and the Lucha Brothers in that post-match fracas. One more Full Gear hype package, this one for MJF versus Darby Allin. And then in our main event segment, it's a contract signing between Kenny Omega and Hangman Page. They say at the top of the segment, the Dark Order and the Elite are all barred from the arena to avoid any shenanigans. That's important for later. So both members are now out there. Hangman gets the first word in, where it says the sooner that he signs the contract, the sooner he'll be able to kick Kenny's ass at Full Gear. Omega trying to get into Page's head here by talking about, Hangman's past with his weaknesses and insecurities. Talks about how the Elite were always the one propping him back up on the horse when he fell. It wasn't just cowboy shit. It wasn't just all him by himself. And he calls Page a disappointment. Page actually, his comeback, he makes a reference to Kenny Omega's relationship with Kota Ibushi. Not naming him directly, but that's what they were referencing when he talks about Kenny and his tag team partner, who he always felt insecure around as well. He brings up last year, Omega telling him after their match at Full Gear last year that he was proud of him, but that was a lie. He was actually afraid of him. Omega wraps it up up by saying, believe it or not, he actually does care for Paige. He wants to offer his hand in respect for a handshake. Paige accepts it, and a bit of foreshadowing. You see this camera guy kind of get in front of the shot that you had there, and it turns out there was a reason for it because Omega drops that line again, good job, Hanger, I'm proud of you. And then the cameraman attacks Paige from behind with the camera. It's Don Callis in disguise, who we have not seen in weeks. And I think it's really funny. He had the added detail of having a disguise goatee and mustache under his mask he was already wearing. He had a double disguise. I appreciated the commitment to that. So then Paige is bleeding from this, and Don Callis, he reveals, I was hiding in my basement for 6 weeks for this moment, as Omega signs the contract in Paige's blood. What a dastardly heel thing to do as we go off the air. The one knock I have in this segment is that the fact that Don Callis interferes and he was there all along, doesn't that kind of break the rule of the Elite being banned from ringside? And if it does, what punishment, what recourse is there for Tony Khan if this blatant violation of the rule he had put in place? But that aside, it was still a strong segment to end the show, and obviously that final bit of build and heat for Kenny Omega going into the title match here. Contract signings, I find them to be passé. We kind of see them too regularly now, I think, but I like the fire that Paige had here. I liked how he was kind of getting back at Omega verbally as well. The throwbacks to the history each man has. I was surprised, again, with that twist with Callis. I didn't expect him after he'd been gone for so long. And again, it's just for the whole logic of well, isn't he an Elite member, but maybe not. But besides that, very strong way to end the show. My grade for this week's Dynamite is an A-. A really, really strong go-home show for Full Gear. And for a show that didn't have a whole lot of oh my God, major once-in-a-lifetime matchups announced, for TV or whatever, the quality of the wrestling was great. Everyone pretty much stepped up their game. And for free TV wrestling, there was a lot of great stuff on hand for this one. A lot of matches got a lot of time and just a lot of great athleticism and great entertainment value on display for everyone here. Like I said, great job building up the pay-per-view, whether it was matches or hype packages, what have you. There was hot crowd, fun wrestling, good storytelling. One thing I would say that was my weakness in this show was the women's tag. Also, it'd be nice to have maybe one more women's segment on this show on average. One thing, like I mentioned in my NXT review last night, is that one thing that NXT I think has over AEW right now is their exposure and their portrayal of their women's division. Maybe not the talent pool necessarily, the depth of the talent exactly, but just the level of exposure that they get. When you compare the number of women you saw on TV on Tuesday on NXT to the number that you saw here on Dynamite, it just seems very lopsided. So I think if they were able to improve on that more consistently, I would enjoy the product even more. And now it's time for my predictions for this Saturday's Full Gear event happening on pay-per-view and various other platforms. Let's begin with a six-man tag match. You got Christian Cage, Jungle Boy, and Luchasaurus taking on the Super Clique of the Young Bucks and Adam Cole Bay Bay. This match, I think, has one of the many matches on this night, honestly, that has the opportunity to steal the show. I mean, we've seen different permutations of the Young Bucks versus Jurassic Express, and now we've got Adam Cole added to the mix. The Super Cliques at their height, basically, the height of their power, it would seem, and you've got Christian Cage added as well. I think that's also a fun element. So I think this is going to be a very entertaining matchup, and I think you'll see a lot of great stuff from the baby faces here, but I believe that momentum is on the Super Clique side, and they're going to be the ones pulling out the victory. Darby Allin taking on MJF in the grudge match between two of the four pillars of AEW. How will the rest of the house sustain if these two pillars are fighting each other? Anyway, I've been loving the build for this matchup here. I love the contrast just in the characters between these two. It's very clear yin and yang between MJF and Darby, and how the characters have shined forth, how they've reacted to each other. I think it's been really well done. And this is going to be a great match, I think, as well. I mean, I think that Darby's going to do his usual thing of trying to kill himself to make MJF look good. And I believe MJF is going to keep his winning ways going, whether he gets interference from Wardlow or another member of the Pinnacle or not. I think that would be a great way just to get more heat for MJF. Obviously, Darby, he can afford to take losses, especially when they're dirty like that. And I think it could make for a very fun match with these two. but I think MJF is going to win. World Title Eliminator Tournament Finals. You've got Miro, who was a replacement for Jon Moxley in the tournament, taking on Bryan Danielson. And another match with a lot of great potential just for like hard-hitting, just emotionally like draining this match I think is going to be. Because we've seen just how like brutal and hard-hitting and just violent and physical both guys can be. We've seen them kind of taking the leash off in AEW as opposed to what they would do in WWE, for example. And I'm liking what I see with both guys. Miro's recent run as TNT champion was great for his image, especially bouncing back after the whole best man thing with Kip Sabian and Penelope Ford. And Danielson being Danielson, having that wave of momentum, I think is going to go into this making a great matchup. I do think Miro is going to pull off the upset. I believe that Bryan is being portrayed as the underdog, but I think a lot of people would think he would win. But no, I think Miro's going to kind of pull off this win here in kind of shocking fashion, just to put over the brutality here. And I think him being the next one to get a shot at the world title plays more properly, I think, into, well, the results that I think is going to happen with the main event. But we'll get to that. Cody, Rhodes, and Pac take on Malachi Black and Andrade El Idolo in a match that was finally made official on the Go Home Dynamite. This match, honestly, this is the one I care the least about in terms of just like the build. I think we got a lot of it out of our systems with Cody and Malachi in the three-parter that they had. This feels like just kind of a continuation of the storyline. I mean, I think the match will be fun. I think it will be very entertaining, but I just, it's just one that I'm not that emotionally invested in, which is ironic considering Cody is always the one who has like the storylines that you're meant to be the most emotionally invested in, but he's kind of taking a back seat this show, I think. It's gonna be a fine match, I guess. Cody and Pac are my picks to win but not much else I can really say about it. In the Minnesota Street Fight, a 10-man tag, you've got the Inner Circle taking on American Top Team. That's Andre Arlovsky, Junior Dos Santos, and Dan Lambert, the manager, and Men of the Year, Ethan Page and Scorpio Sky. This is another match that's going to be kind of one of those kind of off-the-wall ones, I feel, because it's the street fight. You've got three non-wrestlers getting involved. They are athletes, they are fighters, and have a history of fights and stuff, but they're not wrestlers. And so this is going to be a way to protect them by just doing a lot of like weapon stuff, basically. Minimal bumpage, I would imagine, for the American Top Team guys, but it's still going to be a very entertaining fight. It's an angle, like I kind of alluded to earlier in this video. It's one that I'm not that interested in because I've hated the build for this, because the promo game that both Jericho and Dan Lambert have been running is not my cup of tea, and it's been too much of a throwback to like the edgy, like really nasty, insulting things of like the late 90s, early 2000s, the stuff that we've kind of like thrown in the waste bin of like promo stylings, I feel, in the last like several years now. I feel like kind of a step back, but I think it's going to be entertaining nonetheless. I do believe the Inner Circle is going to win because it's just like, this feels like a feel-good moment for the Inner Circle to win and beat the invading MMA fighters and whatnot, and that's pretty much all I have to say about it. I just think there's better ways to use Chris Jericho's mic skills than the way he was, talking the last several weeks. I'm finally warming up to Dan Lambert, especially after the whole Boston Crab thing he did tonight, but, at the same time, what more mileage can you get out of these guys after this feud? CM Punk taking on Eddie Kingston in what I believe could be just the match of the night. I mean, this is the one I'm the most excited to see, at the very least, based on that promo they cut last week alone. I think that was just great stuff. I love the storytelling here, the history these two have, and how they're kind of going way back into the indie days, and they were still kind of like crossing paths in that world. And a lot of people have made this point, and I'm going to echo it, how it feels very reminiscent of like Money in the Bank 2011, when Punk was kind of calling out John Cena for being the establishment guy, the one that secretly nobody likes. And now the role's been reversed. Eddie Kingston's telling Punk that he's that guy now. And he's always been this two-faced, such and such. And I think that just really adds this extra layer, because it's always been smiles and, happiness with Punk since he's been back. This is the first time we really kind of see a wrench thrown in that, where it's like, ooh, there's shades of Punk that we have kind of forgotten about, that be kind of lurking under the surface. And I wonder what that will lead to with Punk down the line, because I think there is potential, and like now that kind of the feel-good moment of him being back has kind of subsided, maybe try doing a heel turn with Punk. Maybe not on this night, maybe not against Kingston, but the beginning of a slow burn in that direction. I think it's going to be a very physical matchup. I cannot wait to see how how they pull it off, but I believe Punk is going to win here. It's going to be, like I said, an emotional match. Like I said, Cody's not the guy with the big emotional match of the show this time around. I think it really falls on this and the main event for later. The Lucha Brothers defend the AEW tag titles against the men who beat them for the AAA tag titles, FTR. This is going to be another just great match. We've seen, we've seen the best of both of what these teams can do, and even though FTR are no flips, just fists, that doesn't mean they can't roll with like the luchadors and kind of make their style complement the high flyers. And we've seen that happen in NXT. We see it happen here in AEW. I think the same is going to happen here against the Lucha Brothers. This could be a great matchup, and I'm really excited to see how it all plays out. I do believe the Lucha Brothers are going to win this one and retain the tag team championships. AEW Women's Champion Dr. Britt Baker defending against Ty Conti, who's been riding a wave of momentum for the last several months in AEW. Should be a pretty good match here. I think Ty will be able to hopefully prove her worth and prove that the push has been worth it and built to something here in this matchup. But I do believe Dr. Britt is going to walk away the winner here and retain the championship. It is still her division right now until the TBS championship stuff is decided, and I think that this is going to be a nice match, but Britt's going to be still the champion. And finally, in the main event, Kenny Omega defends the AEW World Championship against Hangman Page. And look, there's no two ways about this. Page should win. He absolutely should win. It is time. It has been something that's been they've been building toward this for 2 years now, pretty much since the beginning. They've been able to have a nice narrative thread about Hangman's, his rise and his fall, his ebbs and his flows, and so forth, and everything leading up to this point. It would be phenomenally stupid if Kenny Omega won this match and retained the championship. This is just one of those things where, yeah, it's predictable if Page wins, but sometimes the predictable is the good and right thing. There's people out there who are seriously entertaining the idea of, oh no, Omega's got to win here to get that heat and then drop it to Page later. No. Now is the time. Now is the time to strike while the iron is hot. If Page loses here, then any goodwill they've built with him in the last couple of years is going to be pissed away, because there's no better time. There's no better timing, and there's just no better situation after the story they have told for Page to win. If it doesn't happen, then I will be very upset. I'm not going to lie. It just seems like this is the right move and the right time. Page is the champion. You heard it here first. But those are just my humble picks, folks. What do you think is going to happen on Saturday? Let me know in the comments section below, and I'll see you on the other side with my review of Full Gear on Saturday night. One final reminder, folks, there's a couple of days left in the beard poll for you to decide which facial hairstyle I'm going to get for another week. It's going to be either the Jeff Hardy or the Buff Bagwell. It's pretty much locked in with either of those two, but as of now, it is a dead heat. It's going to come down to the final wire, I'm pretty sure here. But either way, 4 great charities are going to be benefiting from this. You want to watch the video to learn more about that. I got it right here. And until then, folks, until Full Gear, I'm Bryan Zane, and I'll see you next time.